had a hat on this morning when I woke up, Tina. Had your name written all over it. There's 4 letters in my name, Rod. How can there be enough room on your joint for 4 letters? Hey, up yours with a twirling lawnmower. Welcome to the Hey You Guys podcast, where myself and Liam are finishing off our horror triple bill with 1978's Halloween starring Donald Liam threw a curveball last week. We actually watched 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street, directed by Wes Craven, starring Freddy Krueger and Heather Langenkamp.
That's always a bit of a name, isn't it? Heather Langenkamp.
Well, I mean, to start off with, there's a lot to go on about this film. The way the film was produced for, I think it was just over $1 million, to the fact it nearly caused New Line Cinema to hit bankruptcy so many times. The fact that this film then saved New Line Cinema and New Line Cinema became the house that Freddy built, jokingly. All in all, is this actually a good film?
I think it is. It's one of those weird ones, though, because I think it's a good film, but fundamentally, this is a horror film. So I guess the most important question is it a scary film?
No.
And I wonder, in 2021, is it? And I know for me and you, or you and I, it probably isn't. But I was like, is that purely down to this being, just showing its age as a film from the 80s? Or is it because Freddy Krueger has become such a parody of himself in the subsequent years that, even beyond, the sequels, just in popular culture, when people think of Freddy Krueger now, they think of him as being this very witty serial killer, basically. And you do get elements of that in the first one, but this is very much kind of Freddy at his peak, dare I say, in the first one, where the balance is just so. But you and I, we can't shift that idea of Freddy out of our head, the witty Freddy Krueger. And plus, there's the whole thing that we've seen this film so many times, so it invariably loses its impact. But what I was wondering is, if you took, say, a 14-year-old kid in 2021, someone who didn't know anything about Nightmare on Elm Street, had never seen Freddy before, and you showed them this film, do you think it would stand up? Because no. I don't know.
I honestly don't think, with everything that's going on, and if you're saying 14-year-old as well, especially round by where we live, and definitely round by where you live. Yes, I'm stereotyping where you live. 14-year-old kids these days, I don't think anything scares them. I think they scare everyone else. I honestly don't
don't know about that. The thing is, the one thing that this movie's got, and I know some of the effects hold up better than the others, but I think the one thing that still holds up very specifically for this film is the concept. And it's the thing that got me when I was younger. It's Freddy's a great character. I would argue the greatest horror icon of them all. I think, in terms of a silhouette, in terms of just that classic imagery, I'm not sure anyone quite tops Freddy Krueger. But what always captured my imagination when I was younger, and what always used to freak me out, was the whole dream thing. Because, you can run away from Jason, you can run away from Michael Myers, but the one thing you can't do with Freddy Krueger is you just can't run away from him. And what it's really telling is you just can't run away from sleep. I mean, the idea of not getting sleep, especially in my advancing years, now 39, the idea of not getting 8 hours sleep scares the shit out of me, let alone Nancy having to stay up fucking 8 days. I would be absolutely delirious. I mean, I always thought of sleep being where I go to escape the real world. I always think of that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air episode where Will Smith is like, man, there's a lot going on. I'm just going to go to sleep and hope that when I wake up, everything's sorted. I have absolutely taken that approach in the past. So I'm like, that's it. I'm just going to go to sleep. And fingers crossed, everything will just be fine when I wake up. You can't do it in this because Freddy will come and fuck you up.
But I call bullshit on that statement, because you just said, right, that you... I call bullshit, because you just said you can run away from Jason and you can run away from Freddy. Have you seen those films? No matter how fast the person runs...
the
Ramblers will catch up to them. So I call bullshit on that part, because
I know what you mean, but
I appreciate what you're trying to say. I do appreciate what you're trying to say in regards to the fact that if something can attack you in your dreams, then where do you go? Because sooner or later, and I appreciate that. The premise is scary.
Yeah, the premise is fantastic. I really think that is the one thing that unequivocally stands up. And I know where we're going to go with this is the fact that. And bizarrely, I actually think Freddy's the issue, not the movie, because I think this film is, in 2021 we're talking about now, I actually think this film is at its most effective when Freddy is being used very sparingly.
Yeah.
It's you think about, when I rewatch this film, the introduction to Freddy's not great. I love that kind of, what is it, that that unique aspect ratio they use at the very start of the film to introduce Freddy.
When he's building his glove and...
Yeah, I thought that was super effective. But the next time you see him, it's like the accordion arm scene when his arms stretch out as he's going down the alleyway. I think that looks absolutely terrible.
And that's the problem, because you're saying for 2021, 14-year-olds, I think you've gone a bit too old as well. This will scare the shit out of an 8-year-old. But
I don't know, man. I think you're overplaying 14-year-old. Don't get me wrong. I know 14-year-olds. We got it in our head that they've seen everything and stuff. But I don't think they're beyond getting freaked out by a movie.
Yeah, but I don't think this is the movie that's freaking them out. Which is what
perhaps not. Perhaps,
as I said, because again, it might be the fact that. But you're not going to get away from Freddy, are you? In regards to, you're saying if nobody knows anything about A Nightmare on Elm Street, and people won't know anything about A Nightmare on Elm Street, but at this day and age, 2021, Freddy Krueger and A Nightmare on Elm Street are two separate entities.
I know. Well, that's what I mean. I'm talking very much a kind of make-believe world. If you could just kind of like drop this movie out of the sky and show them as it was, 1984 style, but show it to somebody who's 14 who somehow has no concept of Freddy as a character. So he's not this kind of cultural icon that he is now. Yeah. He's not this kind of witty serial killer who's, he's almost like the kind of James Bond of serial killers. He offs some kid and then, delivers a dodgy one-liner. And like you said, there are elements of that in this film, but there's so much more subtle. Like he's a lot nastier in this film.
I only picked up on two. It was when he said Nancy. Isn't Nancy the first one he kills?
Nancy. No, Nancy's the main
Tina.
girl. She's the final girl. Yeah.
So when he says, Tina, look at this, and he chops his fingers off, and you've got that smile, there's a little bit of Freddy that we grow to know throughout the rest of the films. But he said a line while he's chasing, I can't remember who he's chasing, and he's going, why are you screaming? I haven't even got you yet. And I thought that's the kind of Freddy that we know. But there was only two things in this. But using Freddy sparingly, just having his laugh, you just see the side of his face, you see the glove. That's all well and good. And the accordion arms, we'll get back to the accordion arms because they're terrible. But what I will say is the effects they did in this, they're coming through the wall.
That looked brilliant. That looked really good.
The Tina dying in the room, Glenn dying in the room. They did all of this on a $56,000 budget. Which
is bonkers because so many of those scenes, they really do hold up. As you say, like, it's hard for us to kind of remove Freddy from what we know Freddy as being in 2021. But watching this for a movie, what it is, as I said, it comes back to the idea that when you see Freddy and he's like the accordion arms, but even after the accordion arms, when he chases after Tina, it's a kind of dodgy run. It's, it almost feels a little bit goofy and cartoonish. But when it's, like you say, Nancy in bed and he's stretching through the wall, you're like, that is unnerving. When Tina is getting dragged up and around the room as her boyfriend's watching as she's being murdered in front of him by an invisible assailant. Super effective. When Nancy's in the classroom and Tina's there in a body bag.
Yes.
Again, what's the common denominator is like you can't see Freddy. It's this invisible assailant who drags the body bag across the floor down the hallway in the classroom. That still looks fantastic.
What they did really well with this film as well is you can't to start with, differentiate dream and reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no like wavy lines or weird cut that then you go into dream. It's literally, is this reality? Is this a dream? And that's what they play on so well in this film, is you don't know what's what. You don't know when it's a dream, when it's not a dream. And it's all done, like that kind of stuff is all done really well. It starts to lose its focus a bit in the acting and everything. But again, for what they did with the budget they had, I think they delivered something really. And like I said at the beginning, it's the house that Freddy saved because this film did so. I think on $1 million budget, it made $14 million back at the box office.
Yeah, and plus
from 1984.
Yeah, and plus, you think how much it's made subsequently in terms of merchandising, in terms of, VHS sales would have been absolutely sky high.
Gone into I think the franchise itself has gone into the 100 millions at this moment.
Oh, 100%. And so much of it would be linked to this first film. Like you say, 14 million sounds relatively humble by today's standards, but that's a film which has made 14 times its budget. But this film would have had such long legs down the line with DVDs, videos, the full work. So yeah, I'm sure, for New Line Cinema, Freddy was an absolute beast. And of course, there's been 6 sequels, a spin-off, a remake. We'll get to that bloody remake later on. But yeah, like, even though there hasn't been an official Freddy film since what? I think New Nightmare was 94, 95?
97. New Nightmare.
97, sorry. And then, the remake was 2010. It hasn't diminished Freddy Krueger as a character. You think it's like, all right, there's been another Jason remake, or, Halloween, obviously there's just been another sequel. It's almost like Freddy doesn't need films. It's just, you think of horror, you think of Halloween, the season as it were at the moment. One of the first characters that comes to mind, certainly for me, is always Freddy Krueger. And as you said, like, a big part of it is that of course, he's visually iconic, but for me, it still comes back to that high concept structure and so much of that, as you already said, is that, are you in a dream or not? Like, at any moment, it can just be, the whole movie can be tipped on its head. All you need is somebody who's like, they don't fall asleep, they just nod off, like they just close their eyes for a second and immediately like, wait a minute, are they asleep now? And from there, it can literally go anywhere. And we've talked about the other films we've done in this Halloween triple bill, Evil Dead, Poltergeist, and this. The one thing there's 2 things actually these 3 films have in common. One is that they've got this kind of high concept nebulous idea of evil. Of course, that's kind of specific in this film to Freddy Krueger, but the high concept allows it to go imaginatively in any direction. It doesn't need to be Freddy Krueger stabbing someone with his claw gloves. That's just a visual aid almost. It's like Freddy Krueger can literally do anything. In Poltergeist, it knows what you're scared of. It's the same concept as Nightmare on Elm Street. And again, in Evil Dead, it's just quote unquote evil. It wasn't quite the Deadite yet. It's just, it's going to do stuff to freak you out and scare you. It's all the same thing. And the other thing I only kind of noticed when I was rewatching Nightmare on Elm Street yesterday was that all 3 of these films have the main character's hair turned white, or at least one of the main characters.
Yeah.
It's like it's the unofficial white hair trilogy. Ash, he gets so scared his hair turns white. It happens to the girl's mum in Poltergeist. And it happens to Nancy in this.
Because that's the thing. In this one, is it because she's scared or lack of sleep? Because if I want my hair to go white, do I just not sleep for 8 days? And bless Nancy, 8 fucking days.
That is unbelievable. That is, I've stayed up once for 2.5 days, and I was so delirious by the end of it, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. The idea of staying up 8 days is quite possibly the scariest thing about this film. At
that point, like 2.5 days, I'd sleep on a bed of nails. Do you know what I mean? But it's just, I
almost fell asleep. What was it? Because we made the mistake. We were going to Korea, and we were going on the early flight. And I said and because of the time difference, we were landing in Korea at like 6 a.m. in the morning. So I was like, well, we don't want to waste a day in Korea. So what we'll do is we'll stay up the whole night at home. We'll sleep on the plane, and then we'll get up and be refreshed and ready to go. And hopefully the jet lag won't hit us too far. And what happened was, I stayed up all night. I didn't sleep on the plane. And then all of a sudden, I get to Korea. I've been up for 48 hours, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I've got to do Korean shit. And it was like, all right, we got on with it, and it was an absolutely mental day. But I remember later on when we were allowed into the hotel at like 3 p.m., I was standing in the shower, and I'm convinced that I fell asleep standing up in a shower. Like, like in this, like a micro nap. It would have been enough for Freddy to come and get me, put it that way.
Well, to be fair, mind,
bewildering.
A Korean shower and I mean, it's literally touching your chest, isn't it? The shower. So you're not going to.
I mean, jokes aside, in Asia, I have had this problem on numerous occasions. I was actually staying in a place for a month in China, and the shower head was, it wasn't tall enough for any human being. They just shower in it before. It was like waist height, and suddenly I'm kind of crouched down taking a shower. It's very weird, but I don't want it to turn into a bizarre Asian shower.
I had the same thing, but not as far. So it was Ireland for a wedding back in 2012, and we decided to catch the ferry. So the ferry was like 3 a.m. So I worked that day, didn't get any sleep, picked up a couple of our friends, drove to Pembroke, waited for the ferry, got on the ferry, just messed around on the ferry, had a couple of Guinnesses, got off the ferry. I have this mental issue where I can't sleep in the day. If there's sunlight shining through, I cannot sleep.
Yeah.
So when we checked in, the hotel let us check in at 8 a.m. The rest of them went and had a couple of hours, but I couldn't. So I was up watching films. And then we went out and had a couple more drinks. So I didn't actually go to bed. So was it like the Thursday, Friday? I went to bed for probably the Saturday morning at like 3, 4 a.m. for the wedding to be on a Saturday. And yeah, by that time, mate, I was so, like, I was staying in a room on my own, and they pushed 2 single beds together to make it a double bed for me. I didn't even know that I had gone through the middle of the beds.
Yeah.
So the beds, because they were on wheels. So when I'm tossing and turning, I woke up the next morning, thought I was being buried alive.
Fantastic.
Because as I look up, I'm just encased in what feels like a fucking tomb at this point. It was insane. I mean,
that almost sounds like a moment from Nightmare on Elm Street. In fact,
I was like, so
pretty
tired.
Horrific.
I was so tired. I had a Nissan Primera automatic at that time, and I was so tired when we got off the ferry. Not tired enough not to drive, but you know, it was like 6 a.m. in the morning. I wasn't really. We were just driving, and we were all trying to follow directions. And I wasn't really paying attention to the road ahead of me, per se, until one of the passengers turned around and went, speed bump. And I hit it at like 60 kilometers per hour. And all 4 wheels came off the ground as we did some sort of like RoboCop Dukes of Hazzard thing and flew through the air and then landed. I thought my car was fucked.
It is horrendous. Driving as well when you're like super tired. I mean, you know, you see all the signs, you know, tiredness can kill. It's like... Oh, it can. It can. I've had to take pretty drastic actions in the past on the motorway. I'm like, I've got to pull over now because I'm just going to fall the fuck to sleep. You know, it's just, I can't be doing that. So there's our official warning of the podcast. Tiredness can kill. The signs aren't there for fun. Take it seriously, kids.
Yeah. So Nightmare on Elm Street, by the way.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I mean, there's a few things to talk about in terms of the cat. I mean, we've already kind of mentioned Freddy, and I think, you know, if we get beyond the whole, is he scary, is he not kind of thing, I think the important thing about Freddy is that he is one of those serial killers, monsters, whatever you want to call it, who you can root for. And I think it's one of the mistakes they actually made in the remake. Because in the remake, they went too dark, too gritty, and they made him a child rapist. And the thing is then, once you make Freddy a child rapist, you can't get behind a child rapist. I know it's bizarre. I don't know why you can get behind a child murderer for some reason, but you can't get behind a child rapist. It's a strange thing. But, you know, it's the same when you see Jason or Mike Myers murdering these kids. A lot of them are douchebags. So you're kind of like, you're kind of half on board, you half want to survive, you half want the fun kill.
It's probably as well the fact that they don't speak and he speaks, because that makes him more, I guess, human. But
it does make it more fun.
He was going to be a child molester in this, wasn't he? He was originally going to be one, and they thought that was a bit too much, so they turned him into a child murderer instead.
Well, there was a raft of child rape. There was like a case around the time. I think it was in Northern California or something like that. I've got the details further down. I'll shift through it now. But they actually thought it was a little bit too on the nose for the time in particular. Yeah. So they're like, all right, let's just turn him into a child murderer. Again, it sounds ridiculous saying it, but it is one of those weird things. It is like, well, yeah, he's a child murderer. It's Freddy Krueger. That's just what the fuck he does. So you get on board with it. When he's a child rapist, you're like, dude, you can't be on Team Freddy if he's a goddamn child rapist. So yeah, like I said, it sounds bizarre that you can be on Team Freddy when he's a child murderer, but oddly you can. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of these kids are douchebags. And half that weird joy of watching these 80s slasher films is that you want some to survive for sure, but you know some are going to die. And some of them, let's take Rod, for instance. Nobody was that sad when Rod got killed because Rod is out of his fucking mind. Also, he had to go.
Rod looks like he's 45. And as much as everything in this film, where you're meant to be scared, you're meant to feel creeped out, and the thing that made me the most creeped out, I thought was so creepy, was listening to these two having sex, Rod and Tina. Mm-hmm. Tina then gets murdered. Then you hear on the news the next day about 15-year-old Tina getting murdered. 15-year-old Tina getting murdered, and we just listened to this girl having sex the previous night. I was so creeped out with that. I thought, oh no,
Well, the one thing that helps, I suppose, is the fact that all these kids look about, like you say, 47 years old. So
yeah, well, if they look 47, then Rod looks about 67. Fuck me, Rod looks like fucking Gene Simmons without the makeup.
He does a bit, and like you say, like he doesn't belong in this film. Like you see all the other kids, everyone has that kind of preppy 80s Americana look. You know, you've got Johnny Depp with his chinos, he's supposed to be the jock and stuff like that. And for some odd reason, they're hanging around with Rod, who looks like a fucking greaser from the 1950s, who, let's be clear, like, what's, goddamn, his name? Glenn. Right? I was just trying to think of Johnny Depp's character's name. Glenn, like, he talks shit to Rod once, and Rod immediately pulls a knife on him, like he's going to stab him. Yeah. Like, if one of your mates pulled a fucking switchblade on you, you'd be like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? You don't pull a switchblade on me. I thought we were supposed to be friends. That would be the end of it.
I wonder if they are friends, though, or if they're friends by acquaintance because both their girlfriends are friends. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that probably is it. And
so, there's a Stephen King book, and it became a TV film called Sometimes They Come Back.
Yeah.
Where greasers come back from the 60s after they get hit by a train. And
I know the one, yeah.
Rod could have been pulled out of that freaking film the way he looked.
Oh, 100%. He's a really odd mix. And I know what they're going for. It's like, he's supposed to be the undesirable, so everyone suspects him of, you know, it's like, if that first scene happens and Glenn is there, perhaps, people would be like more inclined to believe Glenn because he's like the pretty boy kind of quarterback. Yeah. But, you know, you get the impression nobody already trusts Rod because, I mean, let's be honest, he looks super untrustworthy. He carries a switchblade. He's out of his mind. So if you see that happen, you're immediately like, yeah, Rod did it for sure. But yeah, he had to go. But I guess it's one of those weird things with this film is when you think of these 80s slash films, or when you think of Nightmare on Elm Street, if you'd asked me before the start of the film, it's like, oh, how many people get killed in Nightmare on Elm Street? I'd be like, oh, I don't know, like 8, 9 or something. It's only 4.
Yeah.
And so it's 3 teens, and we'll get around to this, but Nancy's crazy ass mum. You know, and of course, you know, this all kind of gets half, maybe not kind of turned around at the end of the film in that kind of weird Masters of the Universe style, where it's like they've gone back in time, everyone's okay. I was kind of almost expecting like the little emerald thing and the I have the power shit at the end of the film. But if we take it as, you know, that last scene is just whatever, only 4 people die in this film, 3 kids and the mum. And again, it's one of the great things about the whole Freddy thing and the high concept is that you don't actually need that many kills because so much of it isn't necessarily the kill as the scares, as putting these kids into like bizarre visual situations. So yeah, you only need to kill 3 of them. Although, you know, they had to go. They had to go. I'm glad Nancy survived, though. Aside
from Rod, they all die in very dramatic fashion as well. I mean,
yeah, except for Rod,
he's thrown around the room. Glenn becomes another blood flood. Like,
yeah, very much inspired by The Shining. His death, his death for sure.
Absolutely insane. And you already mentioned the ending. And I know we jump around a lot on this podcast, but I can't get my head around that fucking ending. Is it a dream? Is it not a dream? And then Freddy pulls the mannequin.
It's a mannequin. It's such an odd shot to end with because at that point, again, like the car thing is great. Like all of a sudden she's dreaming again, or is she dreaming? Whatever. You know, I don't think you have to make much sense of it. I think it was just, you know, this is going to be a cool final shot. You don't want to end with her just winning and that's the end of it. You want to imply, of course, that Freddy's still around. And I thought the car with the roof was great. I love the aesthetic. But then to have the mum get pulled through that little ass window and it just to be so obviously a mannequin, it's like, you know, she could have died in so many imaginative ways. Why did they go? That's up there with the xylophone arms is like the true dodgy bits of this film.
So that's producer Robert Shea's fault, the guy that owned New Line. He loved that ending for some reason. Like he wanted Nancy's mother to go through so they could set up a sequel.
Yeah, well, I don't have an issue with that. It just looks like shit.
He fought because they filmed 4 endings. So there's a TV show called, on Netflix at the moment called The Movies That Made Us. So I watched that in preparation for this as well. And he was just like, they actually wanted Paramount to distribute. So they played the film for Paramount. Robert Shea then, who was in the projection booth, ran down to the guy who was mixing the film as it's being shown, and said, what ending have you got? And he said, I got the original ending. What, not the mum ending? No. He said, no. I've told the guy from Paramount about the mum ending. He is looking forward to that. He wants to see it. So this guy then had to get his assistant to bring that ending from his house. They had 14 minutes left of the film. She was 20 minutes away. So he said, well, what do you want to do? Do you want him to see the ending we got? Or do you want to... He said, no, I want that ending. Mm-hmm. So they paused the film. The producer, Rob Shea, then went out to the guys and went, right, we're just having some technical difficulties. Well, they recut the film to put this ending in.
Oh, my God.
But at that point, they've already lost any momentum they had with the film. Because once the producer, Paramount just went, yeah, not for us. And they left. And it just wasn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, Paramount obviously. It's obviously worked out well for
how what he saw in that ending. Though. I mean, you're seeing all this film, and yes, okay, it's 1984. You can forgive a lot of it because of the budget. The xylophone arms, yes. Mm-hmm. Keep going back to it because it looks stupid. But again, $56K budget, and they did a lot with that. Yeah. But it's a fucking mannequin.
Yeah, well, that is the problem. Like, I get it on paper, somebody saying they want that ending, because if the other ending is more of a kind of full stop on things, I understand somebody theoretically looking at it, it's like, no, we want the ending where it's implied that Freddy's still around. Yeah. So again, from a conceptual idea, I completely get wanting that ending. I just wish that the whole mum getting pulled through the window just didn't look so dodgy. It is one of the first things I think of with this film. And it's a shame because, as we already mentioned, so many of the deaths are really effective even today. Like the Tina death's really good when she gets pulled, like when she's going across the ceiling and they've got the boyfriend as a kind of reference point. So he's sitting in the corner and the camera's right behind him. So he's always on the floor and she's getting dragged across the ceiling. And it's such a clever trick because obviously it's all done in camera. And then the Glenn thing, it's like, yes, the Glenn death is totally overboard with the amount of blood. And it is a rather unabashed Shining homage. But it looks great. And all they did was take a room and turn it upside down and just tip a shit ton of blood out. When you see it on screen, it looks fantastic.
The guy that was controlling the blood got an electric shock from that as well.
Well, I can imagine a few things were pretty on the line.
Because when they were doing it, because when the room's upside down and they're tipping all the blood out into the room, they had live electrics running through it. So it starts hitting the lampshade or the actual room light. And it sent a current through it back up into the metal tubs that they were using and just shocked the guy who was doing it. And you think, oh my God, this is insane. But I love
this is a low-budget, high-concept horror film made in the 1980s. So between the lack of actual labor laws and the copious amounts of what I can only assume was cocaine, I'm amazed nobody died making this film, truth be told.
But I tell you what, the effects designer, I bet he enjoyed... Well, he needed a job, he said. That's why he took it for $56K. But when he found out one of the scenes that he was doing himself, I bet he fucking loved it. Because he was in the bath with Freddy, with Heather Langenkamp.
With Nancy.
So they had a half bath. So Nancy's in one side. Great scene. Nancy's in the one side, and he's in like some sort of chamber then that goes a bit further down. So he sat down underwater, holding his breath.
Oh my God.
Well, he's just doing it. And when you see the video that they're showing, like the behind the scenes thing, well, he's just popping it up. And Nancy said, Heather Langenkamp said, I felt like it was a gynecological exam. I'm just there in the bath with my legs just spread apart. Well, this guy with a glove just keeps popping up and down out of the bath.
Just trying to get his breath back. It's a strange joke. But it did lead to one of the most iconic scenes in the film. Like, obviously these girls are being very sexualized, especially in 80s horror films. But the scene when she's in the bath and the hand comes up out of the water, it looks fantastic. The only thing I'll say is, like, it would be easy to sexualize Heather Langenkamp. She was a very pretty girl in the 80s. I mean, she's a very, attractive woman now, even in the 60s, or late 50s, whatever it is. But it's impossible to sexualize a girl in that situation when she's got that goddamn neck pillow. It's fucking impossible. Okay. Like, is that a thing? Like, neck pillows for the bath? It looks like she's laying on like a giant inflatable seashell. It's like, I'm there. You got this kind of like naked girl in the water. You've got Freddy's hand coming out the bathtub. And all I can think is, that is the stupidest goddamn blow-up neck pillow I've ever seen in my life. So, yeah, it goes to show where my head goes in, a lot of things. Very sad state of affairs.
Take you out, because it was Glenn's death. Like, Glenn gets murdered, and all I can think of is well-deserved because you're wearing a fucking crop top.
He was wearing a crop top. That I did mention that while we were watching. I was like, dude, that is like the croppest of crop tops. And also by this point, it's like, dude, can you not keep your eyes open for 2 minutes? You've had 2 chances now, and every time she puts her trust in you, you fall the fuck asleep. It's like you had to go. You had to go.
Can we mention, is Glenn an asshole? And bear with me on this, right? Because is he having the nightmares as well? Because he is talking a lot of shit about Buddhist monks and these people that do all this shit with the dreaming and stuff as well. And he's saying he's not having these nightmares. But is he having these nightmares and he doesn't want to admit 100%. It? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can see it earlier in the film when they're talking. I think it's Tina and Nancy are talking about it. And it was the first time when she said he's got this like crusty ass, green and red jumper and the gloves. And she's like, I'm having the same dream. And he's kind of in the scene behind them. And you can see he's having that realization. Like, shit, I'm having the same dream as these guys, but he doesn't want to admit it. Like, he wants to believe that it's just some kind of group hallucination, that it's nonsense. So I think I don't think he's an asshole. I think he's just scared. Like, he just doesn't want to admit that it's a thing.
What about the fact, like, when she's asked him to, because he's dreaming about the same guy that they're all dreaming about, and this guy is not killing people. So she's coming up with some proactive plans. Like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to see if I can friend him. Can you wake me up? Is he is it? That's where I get to the asshole part from, because he's like, oh, well, I'm just going to go. And I know falling asleep can't be controlled.
Well, yeah, but I just think it's that whole thing. I think he's just pushing it away. I just don't think
your 2 friends are dead in dramatic ways. Do you know what I mean? I mean, nobody saw her getting lifted up into the air and everything. They just saw Tina on the floor with a couple of slashes in her stomach. So, yeah, it could have been Rod at this point. But I don't know. As I got through to it, and it's probably just because it's Johnny Depp's face as well. But I just think, is he an asshole? Like,
I quite like Johnny Depp's face. I'm not sure why you have such an issue with the very handsome young man that Johnny Depp was, But I think they do just enough. Like I know, like as you say, Tina's being killed, but we already mentioned the scene earlier where Rod pulls the knife on Glenn. So he's probably thinking, well, Rod's totally got it in him. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure he has his doubts, but I think it just comes back to the idea that he's just like, he doesn't want to believe it. He just thinks they're all just being silly. He's having his nightmares as well. He's probably more scared than he wants to admit. That doesn't give him a free pass for falling asleep, of course, because, perhaps he's in that situation where he's secretly been trying to keep himself awake as well. But obviously, I think he's a bit of a douchebag, but I don't think he's a dick, if that makes sense. I don't think he's like intentionally a bad person. I just think he's unreliable and a bit of a shithouse, that's all.
I like that subtle link to Rod as well, having the nightmares, because he's not mentioned them before that. Yeah. When they go outside to see what the noise is, and Glenn is acting tough, saying, I'm going to punch you in the face. And then after Glenn tackles him to the ground and comes up, he's holding this weird fork that people use for gardening. And he says what he's been doing is he's been scratching the walls. That link to Freddy, obviously, that's what Freddy's doing when they see him in his dreams. So I like that subtle link that he got the idea from his dream, because at this point he just thinks it's a dream.
Yeah. And like, he has that moment in Tina in bed. And of course, he's supposed to be like the alpha male, the tough guy. But he even has that moment where it just kind of cracks and says, oh, guys can have nightmares too. So I think, again, kind of comes back to male insecurities, where it's like, he doesn't want to admit that he's scared, so he's pushing it aside. And then I think maybe Glenn is doing it in a more subtle way, where he's like, he's not lashing out at people. He's just pushing it all down and just being like, I'm just not going to deal with this as being a real thing. So this all means it's all on Nancy. And I think Nancy is such an interesting character, because at the start of the film in particular, I was just like, I don't think Heather Langenkamp, certainly in 1984, is a very good actress. But throughout the film, she ends up having this really, what I can only describe as like a toothy toughness, because she is very toothy, very strong eyebrow game, a lot of hair going on. But I totally buy her as that kind of classic final girl by the end of the film. And it's, she doesn't go overboard. She doesn't kind of shift from, kind of everyday girl next door to kind of, monster killer or anything ridiculous like that. It's more like she's the only one who's dealing with the situation. She's the only one who's like, well, I've got to deal with this because no one's going to deal with it for me. And I thought her kind of very subtle evolution as a character throughout the film is actually really effective. And by the end of the film, I totally buy her as the one character in this film who's like, all right, I'm going to have to take care of Freddy. I'm the one who's going to drag him out of the dream. I'm still not sure about the fucking Home Alone scene at the end of the film.
I've been waiting for you to finish talking so I could, because you were mentioning the end of the film, because I wanted to go on to the fucking Home Alone sequence, right? Because, well let's go with the fact that she rings her dad.
The time frame.
Yes, she rings her dad and says, Dad, it's 12:10 now. Glenn died at midnight, by the way. So they're all over there by 12:10. He died at fucking midnight. So he died at 12:10. You got to come in here at midnight and come and get me. That gives you 20 minutes. Right, I'm going now. Then she spends what seems like should be 5 hours. It should be 4 hours alone on the fucking sledgehammer because she's got to drill that into the wall, fix that clasp to the handle. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, dude, it's an all-night job, which she apparently, because you've got to give yourself at least, 5 minutes to, not just fall asleep, but she's got to capture Freddy as well.
Yeah.
So, like, if we're going to give her the benefit of the doubt, we'll say that's 10 minutes. At least that is the minimum of time I'm willing to give her to fall asleep and get Freddy. So 10 minutes to booby trap her entire house. Don't get me wrong, she does a great job. But the time frame is insane.
She hasn't slept for 7-8 days at this point, so falling asleep's not going to be hard. Then time moves differently in the dream.
Okay, let's give it 18 minutes. Let's give it 18.
But time does move differently, but she set her watch to the exact same time that the alarm's going to go off, but the watch is working in her dream and she can see the countdown. So my time moves differently theory is out the fucking window anyway.
Yeah, well, we'll put that aside.
Where did she learn? Where did she learn? Right?
Yeah.
I fucking love this. Where did she learn explosive techniques? From that book? Because she set that fucking light bulb up. Perfect. There was a show called Burn Notice about a spy. And he used to, and I guess MacGyver as well. MacGyver's probably the best reference. Where he could make things that explode out of light bulbs and stuff like this, just hanging around the house. My God, though, like this fucking girl, and she set it up perfectly to a tripwire, like down the stairs. Then, because of course you're gonna have just petrol in a milk bottle ready to go. Like,
she's incredibly well prepared.
Oh my God!
I mean, the military precision with which she kind of puts this plan into motion is unbelievable. But even if we're gonna put that aside, the time scale, everything like that. It's still mental that she's the one. She's like, I'm going to drag him through. And then it's strange. The moment Freddy comes into the real world, and again, it's another Wes Craven thing, he suddenly turns into Ghostface from Scream. He's suddenly so clumsy. Yes. It's like he's falling over everything. It probably goes full Home Alone. Like every single trap he falls into perfectly.
Oh my God.
It's like he can't seem to... Everything he can trip over, he trips over. And you got to remember, this isn't latter-day Freddy Krueger, where he's quippy and he's cartoonish and he's half a comedy character. This is scary, original Freddy. And he's still a clumsy bastard then. Yeah,
the sledgehammer to the stomach manages to get him to topple and then fall over the banister to land on the bottom of the stairs. All he needed was the Benny Hill music at this point.
It is one of those scenes like that last kind of 10 minutes. If you played the Home Alone music to that scene, tonally, that is a very, very different scene. But it's borderline, it's the same ballpark for sure.
What I did like, when they go down into the basement and she sets him on fire, there's another story about what was meant to happen down there. So obviously that wasn't Freddy when he was set on fire, that was a stuntman. And all that was meant to happen was the stuntman was meant to take a couple of steps and drop to the floor, because obviously he's on fire. Do you know what I mean? And they're actually doing it in a basement of a house where there's wood above them. This guy is on fire. You've got to be careful. The guy on fire decided to take a little bit of liberty. So he decided, no. What he was going to do was chase her up the stairs, fall back down, and then start crawling up the stairs again.
Fantastic.
They put him out, and they're going, are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right? And he's like, yeah, I'm great. Did you get it? And Wes Craven was just like, my God, I'm glad you're on my film. Because can you imagine poor, what was it, Nancy at that point, or Heather Langenkamp? She's still got to be filming this, man, because he's trying to open the door and she's holding the door shut. And she's thinking, I thought he was just meant to fall over down the bottom.
this dude's still on fire, right? What the fuck? Is something gone horrendously wrong? And everyone's like, just keep acting. It's fine. It's like, I don't need to act. This is fucking terrifying. He's on fire, for God's sake.
Fucking insane, dude.
Yeah, no. I actually really, despite the fact that it's quite silly, I really enjoy the end of this film. And as I said, I think it really plays up to the Heather Langenkamp as being one of the great final girls. And a big part of this film that allows her to be so resourceful and for her to really, truly be the hero of this film is the fact that the grown-ups in this movie are outrageously useless. We'll get to her mum in a bit because that's a whole different story.
Before we get
dad,
to
who's a police officer, they're like...
Sorry. Before we get to the grown-ups or anything, I just want to mention one more thing about taking him out of the real world before we moved on. That's all right.
Yeah, of course.
What I loved that it did is, and it's the fact that it strips all of Freddy's power away. So Freddy is just powerful in your dream. He is scary in your dream. But when you pull him out, logistics, you're pulling him out of your dream. I don't know how that works.
We'll just go with it.
The fact that it strips him of all his power, and as you just said, he then just becomes, for all intents and purposes, a bumbling idiot. Like
he's just a dude with a glove.
Yeah, he is a burnt man who theoretically is actually dead. So shouldn't he be happy that he's been resurrected?
Theoretically, I suppose, yeah, but I think he's become accustomed to having all of that power. And of course, the reason he's doing this is like he enjoys, he's not just killing these kids for the sake of it, he's specifically going after these kids because the parents of these kids, and that's another aspect of this film, which is only touched upon really, is the fact that they burnt him alive. Like, real vigilante justice. It's like, because of some kind of, a legal loophole, he got away. Who's killing all these kids? They
caught him killing 20-odd kids. The judge, but because they missigned the search warrant, he got let out.
He gets let out. And of course, they immediately go full-on Western style. It's like, as a group, we're all going to go and burn this motherfucker alive. And it's like, man, that is hardcore. And, I think it's kind of like hinted at a few times, but is that the reason Nancy's mum and dad aren't together is because of what happened? Like one of those things, as a kind of community, it scars the community. They just like, we almost like can't look each other in the eyes anymore. It's like, when I see you, I think of what we did kind of thing. So of course, that's only very lightly touched upon in this film, which is a bit of a shame.
It's not really hinted, but is it why he's killing these 4 kids in particular because of that? Or is it more back to Nancy because it's Nancy's...
Oh, no, I think it's all of them. I think he's going after, I assume, all the other kids. So Rod, Tina, Glenn, all their parents were also involved. It's just that Nancy in particular, maybe, because of who her parents are, or because of where she is, or maybe she's just the most interesting character. He's the one he gets involved with. And it could be as much as she's the only one who really fights back. Like he would have just, she would have been the 4th to die in the normal circumstances, but she was the one person who was willing and resilient and tough enough to actually fight back against him, which made for a very interesting ending where, as we already mentioned, the cops, because I don't think it's really about, cops in particular. I know her father is a cop, and the deputy, he gets sent outside to look after his boss's daughter, and he can see her screaming her head off 2 minutes or 10 minutes, as it were, after a kid has just been brutally murdered, and he just looks at her. It cuts away to her, cuts back to him, cuts away to her, more screaming, maybe fire, who knows, cuts back to him. He's like, maybe I should mention this to the boss. You fucking think, buddy?
Even after she smashed the window. She smashed the window.
Yeah, she smashes the window. And he's still looking.
He's thinking, maybe I should actually tell the chief.
Should I tell the chief? His daughter does look a little bit upset. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's bad direction. I think that is an intentional theme.
Yes.
One which runs throughout this film of teen impotence, of feeling like you can't do anything. You can't affect the world around you. And specifically a lack of trust in adults. And of course, they may be taken a bit far in this film because the adults are universally useless. The only one who's maybe slightly useful is her father, but even he only shows up to see her mother get brutally murdered. And then, in fairness, that is the 3rd dodgy scene in this film, where for some odd reason, her skeleton kind of drops down into the bed with all the smoke. It might have looked cool in '84. It just looks a bit silly now, and I'm not sure why it needed to happen.
Because again, that was real life as well. That's where it's because she dragged him out. It's real life, but he's now dragging her down. So are they back in a dream? That kind of.
I assume so. Yeah. It's the only thing I'll say. The one good thing with this film, or I guess that's different to the other films in particular, is that while the parents and the adults are useless, they do at least appear to care. Because if you go further and further into the series, by the end, you've got kids getting murdered left, right, and center, and apparently nobody gives a fuck. Like the parents, the adults, nobody gives a shit. Nobody seems to react to the fact that kids are being murdered all over Elm Street. So yeah, at least they do seem to care. And I want to say that her mother has her best interests at heart, but she is a woman with, Jesus Christ, a laundry list of problems. I mean, was she hiding a bottle of fucking vodka in the airing cupboard? Yeah. She's just caning that. She's talking to her daughter the first time she hears something she doesn't like. She just pulls out the bottle of vodka straight from the bottle, doesn't even pour it into a glass. The one thing I will say in her defense is she can jimmy lock her daughter's bedroom super quick. How quickly, I don't know where she seemed to have a broken clothes hanger at the ready just in case she needed to break into somebody's room. And she breaks into that room super quick, like a pro. I'm like, she's clearly done that before. If you gave me a hanger and said break into that room, I'm like, okay, we'll come back next week and I might have done it. Mum does it in like 2.5 seconds.
But is that a thing back then where the bathroom door had a key lock?
I think a lot of old rooms have key locks. I mean, we've got a lock on the outside of our bathroom door.
That's what she had on this bathroom door, yeah.
Yeah, well, we've got a lock on the outside of our bathroom. We didn't put it there, by the way. Just want to be clear. I didn't put it there. Just want to make that crystal clear.
Are you locking your wife in until she does her business? Is that what's happening right now?
I mean,
you're only allowed to go now. You go. You don't come back out until you've finished. Is that what's happening?
Well, I always remember it was like there were kids who lived down the road from me when we were younger. And when their mum used to go to work, she used to lock them in the house. And I'm like, I get the concept. Like, you don't want the kids wandering around outside when you're away. But you can't go locking the kids indoors, like to the point where they cannot get out. That's like, that is a law. Oh, excuse me. That is a lawsuit waiting to happen for sure.
Well, not in the 80s, mind.
Oh, no, that is the thing. No, it wasn't in the 80s. No. You could just get away with this shit.
That was never an issue. Like, you could go to work and just leave your kid at home. What is it? I think it's latchkey kids, I think they were called back then.
Yeah. That's the way, isn't it?
Where their kids work, so the parents work, so the kids just entertain themselves at home.
Just lock them indoors and just be like, well, just try to survive for the next 4 hours. That was pretty much it. Those are the only instructions. Like, just don't die until I get home, for fuck's sake. Jesus Christ. There are a few things, just random things before we move on from this film. Yeah. Nancy, another reference to a podcast review we've done, it's not Evil Dead 2, but Nancy is watching Evil Dead in a bedroom, which I thought was very cool. And I just thought there were two really weird things. One, the boiler rooms in these houses are absolutely gigantic. To all American houses have these giant boiler rooms. But it's got that like weird picture on the wall of like the dogs playing poker. And I was like, I immediately think of like The Simpsons. Yeah. They're dogs and they're playing poker. It's just like, why is that picture there? And it's the same in the Dream Clinic, where they're all useless, by the way, absolutely useless. The Dream Clinic. There is a very specific picture of a cat wearing a Hawaiian shirt riding a tram in San Francisco.
Yes.
And it's so deliberately framed that they clearly want you to see this goddamn cat picture. I'm like, why did you feel the need to put that in this scene? It's a bizarre choice. But when I appreciate it, who doesn't like a cat in a Hawaiian shirt on a tram in San Francisco?
So the only thing, because you mentioned the Dream Clinic, I wanted to mention one more thing. In something that I think is done really well, because again, you don't need a lot of exposition, and you just need one little thing to move the story on. And what they did in the Dream Clinic was, obviously they're watching her dream, they see her writhing around under the blankets, and then when they pull her out, she's got his hat. I love the fact that then you're not in the dream watching her struggle, watching her grab the hat, watching her come out. Literally, you've watched her sleep, which sounds creepy. She's riding around, you run to see if she's all right, and she's holding a hat. I love the fact that that happened. It's just like, okay, you went to bed without a hat. You've got to, like, nobody's questioning why she's got this hat. And like, again, you say and it's not, it's a decision that the adults will not believe the kid that something like this is happening. But I love the fact that it's not even to the audiences. They don't have to spoon feed the audience within, okay, like she's battled Freddy again. She's ran from him again. And she's grabbed
You don't
just told you. Yeah.
And that is one scene where they really do show you from like the grown-ups, the adults, an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're watching her, she dreams, she freaks out, and then she suddenly got a hat. And it's almost like, well, the people at the dream clinic, they almost like, well, we don't know how to get our heads around this. And then, of course, with the parents, it's, oh my God, we don't want to, it very much in the kind of Glenn mold of being like, it's Fred Krueger's hat. Like, they know who it is. Yeah. And immediately, like, not only do they not want to deal with it, they don't want to kind of drag up this horrific moment in their past. They're obviously all trying to deal with it in different ways. And then they're getting dragged up in the most ridiculous way possible. They're like, oh, I do not want to have to deal with fucking Fred Krueger in my daughter's dreams. This is too bizarre.
Why is the mother keeping a souvenir, by the way?
I know. Well, her mother, as we made clear, she is out of her mind. Like, it's not just in her actions, the drinking, it's the way she carries herself. I think it's actually a great performance. She's just so creepy all the way through. Like, you know something's going on with the mum. Like, this isn't just... and I always find those relationships creepy from the outset when they call their mum or mother... they call them mother.
Yeah.
Yes, mother. Yes, mother. I'm just like, man, this all feels a little bit Bates Motel, you know? So you know something weird's going on. As soon as they call their mum mother, I can't get on board with that at all.
And if you're over 10, don't call your dad daddy. I'm sorry.
No.
Just don't do it.
No. If you're a little kid up to a certain age, daddy shot. I don't know what the official cutoff is, but if you're 10 and above, you've missed that fucking cutoff.
Yeah. Stop calling
mother.
Daddy.
Yeah, like mummy, that sounds infantile. Mother, that sounds creepy. Don't get me wrong. If you were 16 and you're calling your mum mummy, that's kind of creepy too. But mother almost feels like it's a more deliberate choice. Like, oh, I can't call her mummy anymore, so I'll call her mother. No. But just call her mum. Or if you're from America, mom. Although, and just to be clear, if you're from the UK and you call your mom, I'm not on board with that. My wife actually calls her mum ma'am, the very Welsh way.
Yeah.
But I was never on board with that either.
My dad used to hate, I call him Ma and Da. Because I'm too lazy to just add the extra M and D. So it's just Ma and Da.
That is pretty lazy. I thought you'd go for like Pa, Ma and Pa. Just Ma and Da.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, it actually sounds like you've gone deaf. Ma and Da, like it's not a good look for you either, dude.
Moving
on quickly. So, facts?
Oh my God, there is like 900,000 facts on this film.
Oh, there's so many facts. I mean,
what I will say is if anyone wants to learn more about how this was made, and you've got a Netflix account, please watch the movies that made us, the Nightmare on Elm Street episode, because
are we getting any Netflix bunch you haven't told me about?
Oh, I wish.
Netflix bunch. I mean, you haven't advertised it for Netflix. You haven't
noticed my Netflix bling chain I'm wearing right now. Do you know what I mean?
Listen, I'll wear the Netflix bling chain if it gets me paid. I will sell out immediately. Just to be clear, if anyone from Netflix is listening, I'll sell out real quick.
Fuck Netflix. I haven't got that many scruples. If anyone wants to be a sponsor, please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. But Netflix in particular.
Oh, yeah.
We've already started. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Right. So New Line Cinema was saved from bankruptcy by the success of the film and was jokingly nicknamed the house that Freddy built. Wes Craven first came up with the basic idea for the movie from a series of articles in the Los Angeles Times over a 3-year period about a group of Southeast Asian refugees from the Hmong tribe, several of whom died in the throes of horrific nightmares. The group had come to the US to escape the murderous reign of Pol Pot, and within a year of arriving, 3 men had died, all in similar situations. The young, otherwise healthy man would have a nightmare, then refuse to sleep for as long as he could. When he finally fell asleep from exhaustion, he awoke screaming, then died. Autopsy results revealed that they had not died from heart failure, but had simply died. It was this inability to find the cause of death.
Simply died.
Yeah,
it was like the coroner's like, dude, I've got to get home to watch Neighbours at 5 o'clock. Just say they're dead. What do you mean they're dead? They just died.
Yeah.
Of what? death. They died of death, and let's just draw a line under it, okay? For God's sake.
On the official form, cause of death, simply dead.
Yeah, death. Yes, they are. They are indeed dead.
It was this inability to find a cause of death that intrigued Craven so much. Medical authorities have since called the phenomenon Asian death syndrome.
Racist.
A variant of sudden unexpected death syndrome. Otherwise known
as the more racist cousin of the
otherwise known as SUDS.
Oh my God.
Heather Langenkamp beat over 200 actresses for the role of Nancy Thompson, among them Jennifer Grey, Demi Moore, Courtney Cox, Tracy Gold, and Claudia Wells. I have to ask, as much as obviously now you think of Nancy being, or you think of Heather Langenkamp being Nancy, what kind of bloody audition did Jennifer Grey, Demi Moore, Courtney Cox deliver in order to not get this role?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, because I was thinking about the whole Heather Langenkamp thing, and as I said, I'm not sure she's the best actress in the world, but she's obviously very pretty, and she does get better as the film goes on. But I think there's a reason, say, that Jamie Lee Curtis went on to have this long, illustrious career in Hollywood, whereas Heather Langenkamp clearly didn't. And, there could obviously be any number of outside influences. I am overgeneralizing no end. But, you see Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's clearly a very good actress. While Heather Langenkamp is good in this, I'm not convinced she's the best actress in the world. Yeah. And as you say, like you some of the names you rolled off there, you are talking about very good actresses. So I'm not sure. Sometimes it could be as much as she just had the look. And like, whatever you say about it, she did have that perfect girl next door look.
Yes.
And, and I did buy into her when she does get tough on her mother at the end, when she turns on Freddy. So I think maybe there is something in that kind of dual performance, that she can go from one end of the spectrum to the other in a convincing manner. And I think maybe that's the reason she got the role. But yeah, some big names for sure.
Yeah. The scene where Freddy's arms elongate were achieved by having men with fishing poles on each side of the alley operating a set of puppet arms attached to Robert Englund.
Of course, yeah.
Oh, there's just so much about that bloody arm thing. It's ridiculous.
It's the worst age scene in the film. Yeah. Outside of it's just bizarre, because the two visually worst scenes in the film kind of bookend the movie. Like, that is one of the first things you see is the xylophone arms, and the last thing you see is the mum getting pulled through the window. Like, there's so many good kills, so many scary scenes in between, but the first and last things you see in this film are actually a little bit shit.
You're not the only one who likes Johnny Depp's face, by the way. One of the main reasons Johnny Depp was chosen.
I know. I would go as far as to say, you're the only one who doesn't like his face. He's got a super handsome face.
Wes Craven's daughter thought he was, and I quote, dreamy.
He's super dreamy. He's mad dreamy.
Right, where are we? All of the boiler room footage in the film was shot in the basement of the Lincoln Heights jail in Los Angeles, which was condemned shortly after production wrapped due to high levels of asbestos. So they've all got asbestos poisoning.
Go 80s movie making. I fucking love it.
In the original script, Freddy was a child molester. However, the decision was made to change him into a child murderer to avoid accusations of exploiting a series of child molestations in California around the time of production. He was rewritten as a child molester in the 2010 remake starring Jackie Earle Haley. And I never thought I would say the phrase child molester so much as I have in this phrase.
It feels like we've said child. It feels like I've said rape and molest a lot in this podcast.
Yeah, honestly.
And, let's be honest, once feels like a lot, and it's definitely been more than once.
Yeah. The inspiration for the character of Freddy came from several sources in Wes Craven's childhood. Fred Krueger was a schoolmate of his with whom he had shared a paper route, and who had bullied him for several years. In The Last House on the Left, Craven also used this experience as inspiration, calling the villain Krug. Freddy's appearance, especially the dirty clothes and hat, were inspired by a hobo that Craven saw staring at him through his window one day when he was 10 years old. Only a couple more from me then. At around an hour and 7 minutes, there's a scene where Nancy attempts to warn Glenn that Freddy is coming after him. She looks down to discover Freddy's mouth and tongue have taken form on the bottom half of the phone.
It's gross.
Yeah, the effect...
The dangers of a landline phone.
It gets grosser. The effect was made with cheap rubber and prosthetic. The effects team also reportedly stated Heather Langenkamp wanted to take the prop home after shooting, which they thought was unusual.
That is strange.
Take this, tongue phone home.
Of
right?
all the things, do you want to take the hat, the glove, something like that? No, I'm going to take the mouth phone. Oh, okay. Is anyone else already called dibs on the mouth phone? No, Heather. Nobody's called dibs on the mouth phone. That's all yours. Go crazy. Fucking hell.
Glenn was supposed to rise from the bed after the bed bloodbath scene, but that was cut. That would have been good to see, just him just popping out again.
Yeah, I think it was really effective as it was.
Where else have I got? Heather Langenkamp's favourite of her performances. Well, as we said, probably one of the only ones. And
ouch. It was just the way you delivered that line. I tried to kind of tiptoe around it, you know. I tried to sugarcoat it. You're just like, well, she only made a couple of movies, didn't she? The bitch. Okay, maybe I'm going off script here a little bit. I'm ad-libbing. That wasn't verbatim, I'll admit.
Well, and only the last one for me, though, the glove, and why they did this, I don't know, was they actually made it properly with razor-sharp knives. I couldn't say properly then. They made the prop properly.
Yes.
The first time Robert Englund cut himself.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
How mental is that? It's like, dude, this is real? I thought these were rubber. No, they're not rubber. We made real knives. I mean, someone could have told me, dude, it's 1984 and we're all on coke.
So he did it, and then he made a fist. And he said, why the fuck am I bleeding? Well, dude, because they're fucking knives on the end of your fingers.
I don't want to blame Robert Englund on that. One, I think you have to expect that they're not going to be real knives. Two, I would like to think if they were real knives, and this is a movie set, someone's going to come up and tell me, dude, be careful, those knives are sharp as fuck.
Again, going back to our non-official sponsor, Netflix, with the movies that made us.
Oh, Netflix, I love Netflix.
They interview the guy that...
Love you, Netflix.
They interviewed the production designer, the guy, the effects designer, and they talk about the glove. Once you see this guy, you understand why this film was made and like why he did Razor Sharp.
Yeah.
This guy's fucking insane, dude. He's nuts.
I bet half the bloody cast was, to be honest. Jesus Christ.
Well, as you say, 1984 cocaine.
Exactly. I haven't got too many facts. Freddy actually has less than 7 minutes of screen time in this film, which is really surprising. But as I said, I actually think this film is at its most effective when you don't actually see him, which sounds quite bizarre, but it was shot in 30 days, which is insane. It's worth looking up online, but Cooney Murder, I'm not going to try and do an accent, I'm not going to be that racist, is a Bollywood 1989 version of the movie, which got an A grade for nudity and a B grade for horror. So that trailer for that, or at least a kind of visual synopsis, as it were, of this film is available online, and it is bonkers. But some of the scenes in particular are taken directly, very much the Tina death scene. It looks almost a little bit more Exorcist, where the girl on the bed is kind of spinning around in the sky, but clearly inspired by Nightmare on Elm Street. Elm Street is never actually spoken in the movie, which seems insane, but it's not. Heather Langenkamp's boyfriend at the time is credited as creating the famous nursery rhyme song, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
That's good. Is it Freddy or Fred is? Because
Freddy. 1, 2, Freddy. No, Freddy's coming for you. 2
points during that, because they don't call him Freddy. Only Fred calls himself Freddy, and everyone else called him Fred Krueger. And 2 points during that, there was 2 points where I heard Freddy, and then another 2 points where I heard Fred is coming forward.
I always think of it as being Freddy, and
because we know him as Freddy Krueger.
I always think of when anyone's talking about him in a dream sense, in that kind of fantastical way, it's always Freddy. But when the parents are talking about him and who he was as a human being, that's when he's referred to as Fred. I mean, he's never referred to, that child murderer Freddy. It's the child murderer Fred Krueger. Yeah. I mean, but whenever it's him, that guy in our dreams who's trying to kill us, it's Freddy. So I always think of it as being Freddy.
It's the same name. I'm looking too much into it, but I could have sworn it was Fred is coming for you. I might have to watch it again and put a closed caption on and see what comes out.
Clearly. Right. I'm pretty sure if you put in the lyrics online, so I think it'd come up as Freddy.
The lyrics will be Freddy, but I will be proven right at one point.
No, I don't think so. Freddy's colours were initially red and yellow rather than red and green. But Wes Craven read in a Scientific American an issue of it that red and green are the two most contrasting colors to the human eye. So he decided to change it just because it clashes. It's an unsavory collection of colors. And when you look at it, red and green, they don't go together at all. It is a horrible combination. And it's the reason that outside of fancy dress, you really don't see many people wearing red and green jumpers.
Or a Wales rugby top.
Yeah, I admit I am wearing a red and green Welsh rugby top, but I don't think that's quite the same. Oh, fuck, it's exactly the same.
I love how you're going about the clashes and you're wearing red and green in front of me right
That's
now.
what I thought. I'm wearing my Welsh colours. This is national pride, goddammit. It's got nothing to do with fashion. Shit, the Liverpool shirt red and green. It doesn't matter. They definitely clash. What are we on to next? Soundtrack or legacy?
Sorry, an omission before I owe this film an apology because I said this film made 14 million. When worldwide, it made 57 million.
Yeah, I mean, that's not even close.
No.
Was it 14 million? That was domestic. 40
million box office. Well, actually, no, 25 million in just the United States. But I'm wondering if that's just like...
Where did you get 14 from?
I read 14.
I was looking at the Icelandic box office. Or something.
I read 14 somewhere, and I'm just wondering if what I'm reading now says 57, if that's like today, box office gross as now. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you mean. Adjusted, you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. I'm just, we know it was a big hit anyway.
But all in all the films have made 474 million.
That's not bad. That's not bad. And
let's be clear,
I mean, they would have been, you think about some of the later films, they weren't all master hits by any stretch of the imagination.
No. I think we can touch soundtrack very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Charles Bernstein's score is, I actually think, one of the more memorable horror scores. And, it's one of those weird things from the 80s is you think of Halloween, you think of Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. They've all actually got really effective, really memorable scores, or at least main themes.
Yeah.
You think of even Friday the 13th with that, and all that nonsense. And it's like, do modern horror films have memorable scores? I'm not sure if they do. I can't think of another film, but... Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, the big three, as it were, of the 80s, certainly of the slasher horror genre, they've all got these cracking scores. And Charles Bernstein, I think, absolutely knocks out the park in this film. But, I mean, we already kind of alluded to it briefly, but, the nursery rhyme, which Heather Landcramp's boyfriend supposedly created, I mean, that's super effective.
Yeah.
And if you go up to somebody in the street and like, 1, 2, they're going to come back to see Freddy's coming for you. I think I know the whole song off heart. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6,
grab your crucifix.
No.
Yeah?
No. Yeah, 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again. Yeah. It's fucking genius.
I love how you're trying to rhyme crucifix with another number. Like, that's not going to work, dude.
It's not. Dude, you fucked this up. And we're not editing it. You're stuck with it. God damn it. All right, legacy. Quickly moving on.
Before we get to legacy, did you, sorry, it just popped into my head. Did you recognize the teacher?
Oh yeah, what the hell's her name? She's actually from The Conjuring and all that jazz, isn't she?
See, I always remember as the old woman from Something About Mary that tongues her dog.
Oh yeah, of course. And I think she's the mum from Detroit Rock City, which is a film I assume not everyone's seen, but I am very soft.
Is it Lynn Shay? Is that her name?
Lynn Shay, yeah. And she's literally credited as just being the teacher. And I think the series is actually Insidious. I always get those mixed up, Insidious and all those horror films. They all kind of fall under the same banner for me, and I'm not crazy about any of them. But yeah, I thought that was... She's looked the same. She's looked the same for like 40 years as well.
Absolutely. Right, moving on to legacy.
I mean, obviously, part of the legacy of this series is how cartoonish Krueger has come. And as we say, he's become a parody of himself, which is always a bit of a shame. And a lot of that isn't just a popular culture thing. It is just the sequels to this film. He did really become cartoonish. And as a flat-out horror icon, I don't think it gets better than the first film. But in terms of getting that balance between, cartoonish murderer, like larger-than-life character, no pun intended, and still being a genuinely scary character to deal with, I thought the perfect balance act was actually Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Children. Is it The Dream Children? Is that what it's called? Dream Warriors, sorry. And I think most people would agree that that's probably the second best of the Freddy Krueger films. Like the rest of the sequels, they're all kind of okay. You know, the second film's interesting because it's got these like really homoerotic undertones. I mean, undertones. If you actually go back and watch Freddy's Revenge, a lot of it is just flat out gay. And you know, a lot of people say it's more about the character coming out as gay than it is, you know, a kind of traditional horror story. And when you go back and watch it, it's hard to believe that, you know, like if you go back and watch Rainbow, it's hard to believe that everybody wasn't on acid. It's kind of the same thing with Freddy's Revenge, only you're just like, they're definitely telling a story about being gay, 100%. But number 3 in particular, I think, is one of the best Freddy movies. And it's got some of the best kills. Like, this film has some decent kills, but I don't think any actually match the one where the kid's veins get pulled out.
Oh, okay.
And he's like kind of walking him around like a puppet.
The kid that looks like
his veins.
The kid that looks like Sean Astin from Toy Soldiers.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he looks so much like Sean Astin. And that one has the TV as well, isn't it? Where he pops out the TV, and
that's a good. It's got a lot of good kills. I thought that was the best combination. Yeah. And what was one of the characters, Kincaid? It was almost like it was very Dungeons and Dragons crossed with Nightmare on Elm Street, wasn't it? But I actually thought of the later films, it was like the best of the sequels in terms of getting that balance between new and old Freddy, as it were. But I'm actually, and it used to be a film I would always, anyone who's willing to listen, I was like, A New Nightmare I thought was totally underrated. And it completely went under the radar as this, like, it's something of a meta masterpiece. Like, you know, the fact that you've had, I mean, obviously Freddy's dead, you think all the films are done, but then to bring the character back, but for Wes Craven to play himself, for Heather Langenkamp to play herself, all in this, the concept of the film is that they made Nightmare on Elm Street, and now Freddy has come into the real world to actually go after the director and the stars of that movie.
Yeah.
And it was so, and what was that, like 3-4 years before Scream? You know, that's the movie that is celebrated as the first true meta horror film.
That's
but
where Wes
Craven did it 3 years earlier.
That's where I owe you an apology, by the way, because I corrected you and said New Nightmare was 97, but it is actually 94.
Okay, so I was right. Yeah, I thought maybe with the timelines and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, but he'd done the whole meta thing years before Scream was released.
Yeah,
and it's not as good a film as Scream, I'm not going to lie, but I actually think it's probably the 3rd best Nightmare on Elm Street film.
I've only ever seen. I mean, the best Freddy film is Freddy vs. Jason.
Freddy vs. Jason is a good film. It's not the best one, but it's good. It is legitimately good. It's exactly Freddy vs. Jason is exactly what it should be.
Yeah,
it's fucking banana. Like, it opens, like, it ticks all the trope boxes very obviously. Like, it knows what it's doing. Like, the first scene, there's fog, a girl with giant boobs takes her top off for no apparent reason, and it's just like, we're off to the races, as it were.
Because they and it's got budget Jay and Silent Bob in it as well, because they couldn't get Jay and Silent Bob. So.
yeah, totally. Yeah. And the thing is, there's some budget behind that film. Like, it looks good. It's well made.
It was fucking hell, $30 million for that film.
Yeah, and you can see it on screen. It's a well-made film, and it's absolutely insane. And it knows it is, and plays it perfectly. I don't know how you make a better version of, because Freddy vs. Jason is never going to be a great film, and I don't know how you make a better version. I think it's like probably 4th on the list. Like, legitimately 4th best on the list, personally, but whatever, man. But anyway, the point is, there's been tons of fucking movies. There's the surprisingly good crossover, the remake, not great. And I was looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, fair play. I think if you're going to remake Freddy, you can't do if you haven't got Robert Englund in it, you've got to go darker. But they went too dark. And then that was one issue. And the other thing was, I was like, oh, well, it's 2010. You've got all these special effects to hand. You can really get super imaginative with, like, the kills and the effects.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, man. It just fell flat for me.
How was that remake 11 years already?
I know. And I thought they got the casting right and everything, but it just didn't work. And again, it falls into that same category. We've mentioned it so many times of remakes of movies from the 80s as Total Recall and RoboCop. It's another film which is just, it's all right, but it just doesn't capture any of the magic of the original. It's, you know, I appreciate with this, they've swung for the fences and tried to do something different. It's just not a great film. That's the biggest issue with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, totally
never mind. But yeah, beyond that, of course, we've already mentioned earlier, it's like there hasn't been a Freddy movie in over 11 years. It doesn't matter. Like, Freddy's place in popular culture is absolutely assured. You know, whether it be clothing, video games, comics, merchandise. He's everywhere.
Well,
I still think.
I mentioned it at the beginning because he's got crossover comics. Because at the very first part of this trilogy that we're doing, Evil Dead 2, there's a like Ash versus Freddy versus Jason comic. I think he is just everywhere, Freddy. At the moment.
He is one of those. As I said, I can't see beyond the three icons of 80s horror movies. It's like, is there, even to this day, is there anyone who comes close to Freddy, Jason, and Mike Myers? And I'm like, I don't think there is. Like, you think maybe the Jeepers Creepers month? No, he's just not in the same league.
Maybe you throw Chucky in there.
I don't think he's had the same kind of impact. Maybe he's in that kind of second tier, but I wouldn't put him at the top table with those three. The only other ones, maybe Leatherface.
Yeah.
Maybe. But other than that, there was a TV show, Freddy's Nightmares. That was like a horror anthology, which run from, as I said, 3 seasons, 88 to 90. So it had obviously some level of success. But I don't know how I feel, though, about the idea of like, would you want to see more Freddy Krueger? Because I'm like, so much of it is in that performance from Robert Englund. And they've already done the new Nightmare thing. It's like, if you'd ask me, what would I want to see? It's like, the new Nightmare thing sounds like a genius thing, but they've already done it. They can't do it again. So I'm like, do you just let Freddy go now at this point? Because the remake didn't work. So, I don't know. Could be it. But if he has to live in the 80s, so be it. So be it.
I'm good. I'm good where it is. It doesn't really need to move forward for me.
I don't think so. I'm happy to go back and watch all the films.
Do you know, I was just about to say that. He literally just stole my line. I just say this film has made me want to go and watch the others now. So I was going to do it on Friday, but for some reason I didn't get around to it. But very much my plan is to go back and buy the Blu-ray box set with all 7 films. I'm going to watch all of them, even the shit ones. Because there's something fun in every film, and a big part of that is Robert Englund. Even when he is kind of like the Bond films. Like, you think of, like, basically Freddy Krueger became the horror version of Roger Moore by, like, the 4th or 5th film. But even if you go back and watch those Roger Moore films, they're a little bit shit, but there's always something fun in them. And it's the same with the Freddy films. Even if 5 or Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, it's not a good film. But there'll be something to hang your hat on because Robert Englund's always so great in them. Yeah. Video games, there's been a couple.
Yeah, I mean, the only ones I really got were, like, when I think about it, I always remember the Nightmare on Elm Street NES game from 1989, where you have to, like, collect Freddy's bones to bring him back. It's very much a kind of a side-scroller.
That had that rare sleep meter, didn't it? Where when you end up going to sleep, it drags all the other players into the dream world.
Was that the NES version, or was that the Commodore 64 version?
The NES version.
The Commodore 64 version.
Because I never played the Commodore 64 version. So.
Oh, well, the Commodore 64 version was called Nightmare on Elm Street, but was clearly based on Dream Warriors. So you could kind of switch between the characters, and the characters had different powers and stuff. So, so I think you are right about the Dream Meter. But those are the two I remember. And obviously, more recently, there's been like Mortal Kombat. Freddy's come back for that. And Dead by Daylight, he's a DLC character. But in both of those instances, it's the Jackie Earl Hale version. It's not the original Freddy Krueger. And it's like, dude, who wants to see the Jackie Earl Hale version of fucking Freddy Krueger? Like, nobody does. Nobody wants, like, he hasn't nobody thinks, like, if you say Freddy Krueger, no one's going to that character first. Nobody. So it's a bit of a shame that they can't get the original, but hey. Did you have any others, or? I
didn't have any others. They were going to make Jason Goes to Hell one, wasn't they? For the Dreamcast PlayStation 2, but that never got around to it. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that I found about what they were going to do. If I was to see a game, I would make it Silent Hill-esque. Because if you think of... What did they call it when Silent Hill went into Dark Silent Hill?
When you went over to like the other side or whatever kind of thing. Like the horn goes off, doesn't it? It's like, and then like the walls start peeling and shit.
Because that would be the dream, because obviously that has the boiler room-esque feeling. And but then you'd have you traveling through that thing, and you just have this Freddy behind you. Again, mixing genres, mixing games, kind of like, was it Mr. X from the Resident Evil game? Where or Nemesis from Resident Evil 3, where Freddy is just behind you, and you can't kill him. Basically, all you can do is run away from him. Yeah, so because it gives that gives you the kind of feeling that because you are running away in your dream, but Freddy controls the dream. So at any point, at any point, the room, the water, the hallway you're running down could change, and you've got to backtrack or do something. So that would be the kind of game that I would have. That would be kind of fear-inducing as you're playing it. But aside from that, I didn't really know much more of what we could have. But I think that's quite good for me.
No, I think that's really good. And I was actually, when I was thinking about my dream, Nightmare on Elm Street game made in 2021, it was actually very close to that. But rather than the Mr. X kind of Resident Evil vibe, the first thing that popped into my head was Creative Assembly, who made Alien Isolation. I'm not sure if you played that, but it's a fantastic game.
Actually, and it's very, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's very much that same vibe where you can't really kill the alien. All you can do is hide from it or hope to kind of like bat it off for a bit and then kind of run away until it pops back again. I thought if you had the same kind of game, only you're exploring, is it Springwood where it's set, Elm Street? It's like a fictional town in Ohio. I think it's called Springwood. And you need to essentially solve the mystery of Elm Street. But at any point, as you say, Freddy Krueger can pop up, and at that point you've got to hide or you've got to run away, and you have these like encounters with Freddy where you're not fighting Freddy, you're just trying to survive Freddy. And beyond that, it's like, there's numerous points in the game where you're kind of investigating the mystery of Elm Street and the murders, but you're never sure if you're awake or dreaming. It's similar to what you said, but it's never 100%. Sometimes it's not clear, and then all of a sudden it'll go full nightmare. And I thought the game will like fuck with you like all the way. I'm not sure if you remember a game called Eternal Darkness by Silicon Knights. It was released on the GameCube back in like 2001. But that game used to do really effective stuff. Like you'd be playing the game, and then all of a sudden it'd go back to the GameCube load screen, and you'd be like, "Oh, the fucking game's crashed," and you realize it hasn't crashed at all. The game's just fucking with you. And it used to do this thing where the volume would suddenly turn down, and it would have like remember those like green bars you used to get on TV when if you press the volume button, they would kind of go down one at a time. It would bring that up in your TV screen, so you'd be like, "Why the fuck is the volume turning down on my TV?" And it was actually the game doing it too. And I thought you could kind of incorporate that into a Creative Assembly developed Nightmare on Elm Street game as you explore and investigate Springwood. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool to me. So that'd be my idea anyway.
Also, because you just made me think about that because there was a game that made me freak out a couple of times because the little girl will just appear on the screen and scream at you. Fear? Yeah, I remember Fear. Straight away, because you could do that kind of thing then as well, where you could have like, maybe it's not the teenagers this time, but maybe it is the army trying to deal with Freddy or something. Yeah,
if you wanted to go more action oriented.
Yeah.
I just always think it's like, and it is the best, like the film's at its best when you're almost like, the point is you feel powerless. And that is one of those great things that those games do, like you already mentioned, like the Resident Evil games. I think they're some of the best characters. They actually did it brilliantly, even though it was more in the style of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But in Resident Evil 7, I can't remember the name of the family, but the best part of that game, like the second part goes more kind of classic action, but the first part, when you're in their house and the father just out of nowhere just bursts through a wall, or if you're downstairs and all you can do is hear his steps upstairs, and you're just like, he could show up at any moment and you can't kill him. All you can do is survive an encounter. I was like, I always find that in video games in particular so much more effective. And it was the reason I didn't finish Alien Isolation. It wasn't that it was scary. It was just that it was so fucking intense. Like those moments, I find them so relentlessly intense where it's like, this fucker can show up at any moment. And that Alien Isolation is like 12 hours long. I got about 6 hours in. I was just like, this is too much. This is too fucking much. I'm turning it off. I wasn't terrified. It was just too tense.
That Resident Evil 7 was the Baker family.
The Baker family, yeah, they're fantastic.
I've got it to play now. I've never played it because I'm not a huge fan of first person. I like third.
I was exactly the same. Especially, I'm a massive Resident Evil fan. And I was like, dude, you've turned Resident Evil first person. I had played, obviously, a lot of it was down to PT, the famous horror demo by.
Yes, there was going to be Silent Hill.
Yeah. So I was like, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, and it works so much better than I thought it would. Especially the first half. The first half of Resident Evil 7 in particular is absolutely spectacular.
I've got it on the PlayStation ready to play, so at some point I will get to it. But
I'll be interested to hear what you think. Yeah, it's really good.
It's trying to give it the time, especially because what turned me off it was Resident Evil 6, because that game was terrible.
I've got like a love-hate relationship with 6. I finished all 4 storylines on 6, even though that game isn't very good. But it was one of those games, like, it's got so many problems, but there was something about it that I loved. Do you know, like, you have those movies or games where you're like, objectively, it's not very good, but there's something about it which gets its claws in.
Yeah.
That was a classic case because, like you said, it's a long fucking game, Resident Evil 6, and I played all of it, despite the fact that I was playing it. And as I was playing it, I'm like, this isn't very good. I'll just play another 18 hours, and then that'll be it then.
Right, let's score and recommend this film then. I guess that's what's left, isn't it? So I gave Poltergeist 2.5 last week. Mm-hmm. This is better than Poltergeist, in my opinion, but it's a 3.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
It is a 3. I mean, I do appreciate some of the work, like again with the room spinning and what they did with the budget and everything. But I don't know, it just lets down by some of the acting. It gets let down by some of the decisions that it's made, and it's a 3 for me. Would I
think that's totally fair.
Would I recommend it to others? Yes, but they would be horror fans. Or
no, I agree. I
would not be recommending this to anyone just out of the blue.
You're not going to just grab a person straight. It's like, you haven't seen the original Nightmare on Elm Street? No. I think it's one of the specific, like, we should specify, because obviously, you know, we've done so many of these podcasts now, is when we're rating this film, we're not rating it based on its importance to cinema. We're really rating it based on how it plays today. Yes. That is really how we're rating it. You know, the big question asked is, like you say, does it hold up? Would we encourage other people to watch it? So if I was reviewing this film in 1984, I think it's borderline a 5-star horror film. But in 2021, rewatching it, I actually agree with you. As much as I love this film, it's not without its faults. It's not without its rough edges. And I think in 2021, it is a 3-star film, an enjoyable 3-star film, but a 3-star film all the same. And that's not to diminish or to understate its importance to the genre, to cinema even. But as we said, in 2021, this is a 3-star film. Again, and I completely agree with you on the whole, would I encourage other people to watch it? If you're a big movie fan and for some odd reason you hadn't seen Nightmare on Elm Street, you should watch it because it's an important film. And there are scenes that still stand up, and Freddy's still a great character. But like you said, if it was just, you know, one of my friends from work who's not necessarily a huge cinema guy, who's like maybe 10, 15 years younger than, you know, if he's like 25 and he's like, well, I haven't seen Freddy Krueger, I'm not going to be the one who says you have to see it. I just wouldn't.
Yeah. As you said about the scoring, it is one of the mantras that we go by on this podcast, which is not necessarily a great film, but a good watch or a great watch.
This one ticks that box again.
So, so it's a very good watch. It's very enjoyable. But in 2021, is it a great film? Yeah, is it has scary? Yeah,
no, I'm not sure. You know, these are all the questions we like. It's not particularly scary in 2021. It does have some of those 80s rough edges, which is totally understandable. This film's nearly 40 years old, and it was made on a limited budget.
Yeah,
you've got to be willing to overlook those to get to the heart of this film. And the fact of the matter is, some of the characters, they do look, you know, almost ridiculous in that kind of mega 80s attire. And that quote you used at the top of the film, like, some of the dialogue is a little bit suspect. But again, it's still a super fun film. It's still a very, very important horror film.
Yes.
And as I said, the character in particular, I'm not sure if anyone is more iconic than Freddy. But yeah, in today's day and age, this is good. We're back on the same page here. 100% agree. 3-star film, and I would potentially encourage others to watch it, but with numerous caveats attached, for sure.
All right, so it's just, I guess it's next week's choice now, is it? That's what's left?
Yeah, so that's the end of our 3-part horror trilogy. So we're back to business as usual now until we get to Christmas time. So we've got a couple of weeks until we go absolutely bonkers at Christmas, which we will, by the way. If you our triple bill at horror, I think we'll be replaced by a quadruple, or maybe even, no, we'll do a quadruple Christmas special. I think that's going to be the case.
I mean, spoiler alert, Gremlins, but...
there's so many. Well, I think it becomes a Christmas, like, which ones do you leave out? Like, there's so many great Christmas. I mean, we've already done Die Hard, thank God, so that does leave the door open. But we won't go into the list. We do want it to be a surprise. But next week is your choice. Yeah. So after I hijacked Halloween and made you do Nightmare on Elm Street instead. So it's back to you.
I appreciate it, because I rewatched Halloween as well. And okay, so...
that's another one where it's an interesting conversation, which we won't get to now, because we might end up doing a next Halloween. Because I feel like we should do Halloween at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got a lot to say about that film. But hey ho.
So you've kiboshed a lot of me wanting to watch Garbage Pail Kids. So
fuck yeah.
So how do I get my fix of?
Tread carefully, sir.
Oh fuck! I'm not even going into it. Willow.
We're doing Willow.
Yeah.
Let's be clear, a much better movie than Garbage Pail Kids. Yeah. And spoiler alert, a much better film than I actually remember in terms of how it's made.
Yes.
You know, I remember that being a kid's fantasy film, and then I went back and rewatched. I was like, "Fuck, this is a really well-made, well-directed film with a lot of talent behind it." So, yeah, I think it's one of those. If you get the opportunity, it's on Disney Plus at the moment, and in HD in particular. Fuck me, this film looks legit. Especially the first half looks fantastic. So if you get a chance, please do rewatch it, and please do join us next week for 1988,
87, 88, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
It's and it's a good time to watch it now as well, considering next year the sequel series will be out. But we'll get to that in Legacy next year. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But no, thanks for joining us for the third part of this horror trilogy. Please do join us next week for Willow. And as always, thanks for listening. Oh, yeah. And before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1-star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't go smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.